Have you ever had a pimple that just wouldn't quit? Maybe it grew bigger and bigger, or maybe it refused to go away with treatment. Well, if you thought those were the worst things that could happen to you from ignoring a pimple, think again, because these next few stories will blow your mind. From a life-threatening pimple to one that left a massive scar, here are 6 stories about what happens when you ignore a pimple. Number 6. Unexpected pimple surprises. What happens when you ignore them? We all know how annoying pimples can be. They're painful, they're itchy, and they seem to appear right before some important event. But what actually happens if you ignore a pimple? Some people believe that if you leave a pimple alone, it will eventually go away on its own. Others say that if you squeeze a pimple, it will only make things worse. So what's the truth? Well, there is no one definitive answer to this question, as every pimple is different. However, there are some general guidelines that dermatologists recommend following. First of all, if a pimple is not causing any pain or inflammation, then it's probably best to leave it alone. The body will naturally get rid of the pimple over time. However, if a pimple is causing pain or inflammation, then it's important to take action. One option is to apply a warm compress to the area in order to reduce inflammation. Another option is to use over-the-counter treatments such as benzoyl peroxide or salicylic acid. If these treatments do not work, then it may be time to see a dermatologist. A dermatologist may prescribe stronger medication or perform a procedure to drain the pimple. So what happens if you ignore a pimple? In most cases, nothing bad will happen. However, if a pimple is causing pain or inflammation, then it's important to seek treatment. Otherwise, the pimple could grow and become infected, leading to more serious complications. No. 5. From tiny blemish to major crisis. My pimple horror story revealed. Yes, the dreaded pimple. We've all had them, and we all hate them. Pimples are those pesky little blemishes that can pop up on our skin at the most inconvenient times. And while they're usually harmless, they can sometimes turn into a major crisis. Let me tell you a story about one of my patients who learned this the hard way. She is a 24-year-old woman who came to see me because she was concerned about a small pimple that had appeared on her forehead. At first, it was just a tiny blemish, but she noticed that it started to grow larger and more painful over the course of a few days. She tried treating it with over-the-counter creams, but nothing seemed to help. And as the pimple grew, so did her anxiety. She was worried that it would be a big problem for her upcoming job interview. So she decided to see a dermatologist. When I saw her, I knew that she was right to come in. The pimple was large, red and swollen, and it was clear that she was in a lot of pain. I drained the pimple and prescribed her antibiotics to treat the infection. But even after the pimple was gone, she still had a large scar on her forehead. She was devastated, but I told her that there was nothing more that I could do. This is a story that I hear all too often. People ignore a small pimple, thinking that it will go away on its own, but it ends up becoming a major crisis. Pimples are caused by bacteria, and once they start to grow, they can quickly become infected. If left untreated, they can lead to serious complications such as sepsis. So it is important to see a dermatologist if you have a pimple that is not improving. With treatment, there are many different ways to treat pimples, and a dermatologist can help you find the best option for your skin type and lifestyle. So if you have a pimple that is causing you distress, don't hesitate to seek professional help. It could save you from a lot of pain down the road. Number 4. Pimples that changed my life. Shocking skin condition outcomes. Imagine waking up in the morning and looking in the mirror only to see a huge pimple staring back at you. You try to ignore it, hoping it will go away on its own. But day after day, it gets worse. It becomes so large and painful that you can barely stand to look at it. And then finally it bursts, leaving behind a nasty scar that will never fade. If that sounds like your worst nightmare, then count yourself lucky, because that was the reality for thousands of people who developed a rare but potentially disfiguring skin condition known as pyoderma gangrenosum. Pyoderma gangrenosum is an incredibly rare disorder that causes ulcers and abscesses to form in the skin. It typically occurs in people who have other underlying health conditions, such as inflammatory bowel disease. But in some cases, it can be triggered by acne. That's why it's so important to seek professional help for any persistent pimples. Even though the condition is rare, it can have devastating consequences. People with pyoderma gangrenosum often experience intense pain, and their skin can become so damaged that it looks like they have been burned. The emotional toll of this condition can be just as great as the physical toll. Many people with pyoderma gangrenosum develop social anxiety disorder because they are so ashamed of their appearance. Fortunately, there is hope for people suffering from this condition. Treatments such as corticosteroids and immunosuppressants can help to control the symptoms. But early intervention is key. If you notice any unusual changes in your skin, please see a dermatologist right away. Early diagnosis and treatment can prevent the condition from getting worse. So what can you do to protect yourself from developing pyoderma gangrenosum? First and foremost, take good care of your skin. This means washing it regularly with a mild soap, staying out of the sun, and using sunscreen whenever you go outside. If you have acne, make sure to treat it properly. Don't pick at your pimples or try to squeeze them out. This can make the problem worse and potentially lead to a skin infection. Finally, if you notice any changes in your skin, no matter how small, see a dermatologist right away. It could save you from a whole host of problems down the road. Number 3. What this common pimple really means. What you didn't know. Pimples are a common skin condition that affects millions of people. They are usually harmless and often go away on their own. However, there are some instances where a simple pimple could be a sign of something more serious. That's why it's important to know what to look out for. One of the most concerning aspects of pimples is their potential to leave scars. While most pimples will heal without leaving any permanent marks, there are some exceptions. If a pimple becomes infected or is repeatedly squeezed or picked, it can lead to post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation or PIH. This condition causes the skin to become discolored and can be difficult to treat. To prevent PIH, it's important to avoid picking or squeezing pimples and to treat them gently. Additionally, using over-the-counter treatments containing ingredients like salicylic acid or glycolic acid can help to exfoliate the skin and reduce the appearance of PIH. Another potential concern with pimples is their impact on mental health. For some individuals, having pimples can cause feelings of shame, anxiety, or depression. The constant worry about their appearance can take a toll on their emotional well-being. In these cases, seeking support from a mental health professional can be beneficial. Moreover, learning to accept oneself despite having pimples can be an important step towards building self-confidence and self-esteem. It's also important to note that pimples can sometimes be a symptom of an underlying medical condition. In rare cases, they could be a sign of a hormonal imbalance or an issue with the thyroid gland. If you have concerns about your health, it's always best to consult with a healthcare professional and get checked out. Overall, while most pimples are harmless, it is important to be aware of the potential risks and take the necessary precautions to protect your skin and mental health. By being informed and proactive, you can navigate the challenges of pimples and maintain a healthy, confident appearance. 2. The hidden dangers of pimples. When a simple zit becomes a nightmare, we've all been there. You go on about your day when suddenly you notice a pimple has formed right in the middle of your face. You try to ignore it, but it only seems to get bigger and more inflamed. And just when you think it can't get any worse, you feel a sharp pain. Before you know it, the pimple has grown into a full-blown crisis. Well, Believe it or not, that seemingly harmless pimple could be hiding a much more sinister secret. In fact, a recent study published in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology found that certain types of pimples could be a sign of a much more serious underlying condition called pyoderma gangrenosum. Pyoderma gangrenosum is a rare skin disorder that causes painful ulcers to form on the skin. And while it's typically associated with other conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, the study found that it can also be triggered by acne. The researchers discovered that a small percentage of acne lesions contain a bacteria called Fusobacterium nucleatum. This bacteria is normally found in the mouth and is usually harmless. But when it enters the body through a wound or cut, it can cause an infection. And in some cases, this infection can develop into pyoderma gangrenosum. The scary part is that this condition can be difficult to diagnose, as the symptoms can resemble those of other skin disorders. And if left untreated, it can lead to severe complications. Luckily, there are treatments available that can help manage the condition, but it's important to seek medical attention right away if you suspect you may have pyoderma gangrenosum. So what does this mean for you? Well, it's important to remember that not all pimples are dangerous. But if you notice that a pimple is causing you pain, swelling, or redness, it's important to take action. Don't try to ignore it or squeeze it, as this could make the problem worse. Instead, visit your healthcare provider and get a proper diagnosis. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about your body and the changes that are happening to it, the better equipped you'll be to take care of yourself and spot any potential problems early on. So don't be afraid to ask questions and do your research. Your health is worth it. Thank you for watching.